Well, welcome, Amy, and everyone listening. We are having a contributor spotlight feature, which I'm so excited to start this offering as part of the Humans Evolving platform. And I thought, oh, there's no one else I would rather begin with than Amy Piper, who has been a great friend of mine for many, many years. We met in Detroit, close to, I don't know, almost maybe 20 years ago, 15 years, 20
It's getting up there. Yeah.
And Amy is not only an incredible human being, also a human who's evolving, but she has great depth and mastery in emotional freedom technique and tapping. So, Amy, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Yes. We're going to go through just for about the next 20 minutes or so and do a really casual interview. And I thought the first question we could discuss is, what is EFT? What does the acronym stand for? What is it?
Sure. Great question. And I'm excited to dive in. Thanks for having me. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And a lot of people have heard of it referred to as tapping. So you'll hear that word because there is tapping involved on the acupressure points, on specific acupressure points. So whether you hear EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, or tapping, it involves tapping on these specific acupressure points, like meridian pathways, while you're verbalizing a problem. So the reason is we tap and talk at the same time. Kind of the underlying foundation of EFT is that we're trying to get at that part of the brain that's nonverbal. So the part of the brain that doesn't register spoken language. What do I mean by that? We have the neocortex, right? That's where all our logical thinking is, where most of us live all the time, trying to think our way through things. But underneath that, we have the limbic brain, the emotional brain, and that's where memories are held, emotions, events, fight, flight, or freeze response. So the reason EFT is so powerful is we are talking, we're verbalizing, so we're getting to that rational part of the brain, but we're tapping at the same time, and I can go through the tapping points if we have time for that. To get to that emotional brain too. So we're kind of not just doing a top-down approach, we're coming bottom up. So that's it in a nutshell.
I love that. And that's really why, for me, it's just another embodiment practice. Just being able to feature this is something that when we do look at the physiology, and tap on these different points, which I think we should definitely make a little time for you to
Okay. I hope so.
How that can change our state. So that's amazing. And how did you find EFT?
Yeah. Just to your point, it is very somatic. And I think people that feel a lot and they can't always verbalize what the issue is or put words to it, and really get underneath something. The tapping helps relax. The actual tapping on the acupressure points relaxes the body, reduces cortisol, so they can really access, why am I feeling this way? And when did this start? Whatever the thing they're dealing with. So it has this effect of kind of taking down the body, taking down anxiety enough to kind of open up what's underneath this way that I'm feeling, or maybe it's a problem I'm experiencing. So that it is very somatic. I love that. I found it. Go ahead.
Has there been much research on it? Is there?
Yeah, there has. They're catching up. They always say in the field of EFT, we were a little late to start the research, where other modalities such as EMDR, that's the eye movement therapy, they started earlier, but we are catching up, and it's really beautiful. There's a growing body of research happening all the time, so it's really exciting. studying kind of control groups, maybe on one certain thing like PTSD.
Mm.
They did a lot of research on veterans with PTSD because it was a control group.
Mm.
But now they're going over and studying other groups of people with different concerns or problems and using EFT and then measuring things like cortisol levels, things like that, mood, things like that. So it's really nice. They're catching up.
I love that.
But about how I found it, I was a client years ago, and it was, gosh, over 15 years ago. So it's been a while, and I didn't know, I hadn't heard of it. I think it's, there's so many YouTube videos now where it's kind of talked about more. Psychologists and therapists are using it more as a modality. So you're hearing about it now, but back then I didn't know what I was doing. I had found it, I had gone through a difficult breakup and was very sad. And it kind of persisted for over a year where I just wasn't wanting to date and just not feeling very happy. And I was introduced to this woman that one of her modalities was EFT. And I just instantly felt better. It was, I don't know, probably 1 or 2 sessions. I went on to work with her on other things, but about that specific issue, in 1 or 2 sessions, that dating, feeling great, clearing a pattern I'd had with dating and relationships, romantic relationships, that really was noticeable. So I was like, this is amazing. But it took me quite a few years. I was a client and just didn't really think about becoming a practitioner. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is amazing. Why am I not training to share this with people? Because it was so transformational for me at multiple periods of my life. Yeah.
And what I didn't mention about you is you're also a speech pathologist. So have this real understanding as well of the brain and our wiring. So that must have felt really kind of synergistic.
It did. I think that was a big part of it too, was I was in a field of primarily, I work with adults that had brain injuries could be a head injury from a car accident, could be a stroke, whatever. And I was working with a very specific thing, their speech. But really, when you work with someone that's been through a trauma and their family has gone through it too with that loved one, you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, depression, a life change. And it felt like I was working on this little, like, microscopic piece, not to diminish what speech pathologists do. It's an incredible work. But for me, it felt like, wow, the elephant in the room is that this family is like completely traumatized about this loved one going through something. And I'm working on this thing when there's just so much more here. So I loved that, how EFT comes in and really can work on so many things, on the emotional piece of things. Yeah.
Well, that leads me to, you said it can work on so many things. You mentioned PSTD. Like, what are so many things?
Yeah, great question. It works on I'd say emotional problems or difficult emotions. It also works on physical things. So I'll give some examples, anything from depression, anxiety, panic attacks. They can work on weight loss. Some people with emotions and difficulty on that. Relationship issues. So emotions on maybe someone's going through a difficult time in their relationship. It works on any kind of traumatic memories. So, or painful, even if you don't want to use the word trauma, maybe painful events of your life, difficult memories. All the way to, I get people with physical problems, right? Chronic illness, maybe a stubborn issue physically that just won't go away. And they intuitively know there's a kind of an emotional piece to it. And so, yeah, I think it can go all the way from emotional to physical things. It could be as simple as, I'd say oftentimes people come to me and the thing that they came to me for isn't always what we end up working on. So I'll give an example. Maybe a client comes saying, well, I'm having a horrible time with my boss at work. which is just this person's really treating me poorly and badgering me, and my life is difficult because of this. Well, we'll start tapping on that, right? That's what they came to me for. But as we get into it, remembering we're relaxing the body, so more stuff is coming up, we might say, wait, who does your boss remind you of?
Mm.
This is them. They are coming up with this, right? Like, oh my God, my boss is reminding me so much of my mom. Or maybe how another authority figure treated them going back, So sometimes we'll end up working on something deeper than what they initially come to me for.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. So I like it. I think it is very thorough because you're tapping and you're peeling back the layers on something in a really organic way and keeping the body in more of a relaxed state too. So if, emotion does come up like grief, that's another big one. I get clients working through grief, maybe a loss of a loved one, peeling back the layers on something to let it go so you can move through it. And it's not traumatizing anyway, because you're tapping while you're releasing. So you're staying more in a calm state. We're not trying to put the body into any kind of response, activating it. We're trying to keep it calm.
Yeah. For me personally, I've just found it to be so accessible for everybody, just such an accessible means. And you and I share in the practice of Kriya, as part of on the limb of Kundalini yoga, as we are connecting into that of our higher potential and, Kriya kind of working and more of the physiology of the body. But the tapping just seems so readily available to everyone. And, my daughters have worked with Amy, for people listening. And, I loved all those examples of really how do we deal with life, as these things come up. But something simple in our household, we just even talk about the mind and how we can get just so stuck in our thoughts. And I'd love for you to just to talk for a couple minutes about working with children, Amy, because it's like it's a way forward for them to just find their own kind of default mechanism when they're feeling kind of that density and that heaviness within.
Yeah, I love working with kids so much, and you've given me that opportunity to work with your girls, which is so great. I think what's so neat with kids is oftentimes when you're working on something that they're struggling with, they haven't carried it that long. They're young, right? I'm working with an adult, they might have carried this thing for a long time, right? Something that happened to them or that they experienced or something they internalized. So the beauty of kids is they drop things so quickly. It almost catches me off guard. I'm like, wait, oh, we're done with that? Okay, great. I love teaching. I mean, what's wonderful about EFT tapping is that you can do it on your own. So my adult clients absolutely do it on your own. With children, I encourage parents to tap with their kids. And what that can look like, kids are very literal. So when you're working with them, maybe you can have them tap before they go to bed. They really are just telling you straight facts. They're not always verbalizing an emotion so much. So the teacher yelled at me today. I got in trouble at school. Someone kicked me on the playground. So-and-so was mean to me. It's a little more factual, depending on the age of the child. As you get into adolescence and high school, obviously they can verbalize their emotions more. They have language for it. But the kids, the younger ones, it's really them presenting facts, and you can tap through that, right? Even though so-and-so was mean today, so-and-so pushed me, whatever, and they can tap through it and release it. And if something scary happened to them, if the parent's concerned, the child maybe had something mildly traumatic happen to them, tap through it. Let's clear it now. So they don't carry it around. So the quickness, that's really fun is that kids drop things quite quickly.
I
Yeah.
love that. Just our ability to kind of connect into our lightness, the lightness being. And, in the yogic world, we're always talking nowadays about, how to reduce stress, reduce anxiety. And in the
Mhm.
yogic world, it's like, well, we don't even have to live with that. And
Right.
I just feel too, EFT, it's this tool that even then, if it comes back in, whether it's the pattern or the child, kicking the child again at the playground, you have a mechanism
Mhm.
to let it out of the body. One of my teachers always said, what happens to you, move it through you. And this again just feels like I know through my own experience, it's such a powerful.
Yeah. I love that you said that because there's different ways to do it, right? EFT is one of them. Kriya Yoga is another, right? But it is all about moving it through. And what I think I say this a lot, what I love about EFT, you probably hear me say that 1,000 times. But what one of the biggest things is you get to feel the feeling.
Mm,
So I'm not just saying if I had anxiety, let's say, I'm not going, I'm not anxious. I'm not anxious. Nope, I'm good. I'm not anxious. It's like, no, I'm actually anxious.
mm,
So, or plug in another word. I'm actually feeling a lot of grief right now. And so I'm going to verbalize that even though I'm feeling all this grief. And I'm feeling really low today.
mm,
I want to come to a calm and peaceful place about this. This is one of the tapping points.
mm,
I'm naming the issue. I'm not anchoring it in. I'm acknowledging it, naming it, feeling it so it can be released.
mm,
So I love that. I love positive thinking, of course, and I think it's wonderful. But if I'm feeling something, I do need to feel it, move it, like you just said, and then allow it to go, allow it to move through, let it go. And I think this modality it's great. I get to name the thing, feel it, and let
mm.
it go. And it really works. It's very effective.
That is so transformational, just the naming it. You
Yeah.
know, I feel like
Yeah.
generation, we were taught to kind of suppress
Yeah.
that and just keep going. But in order to heal it, you have to feel it. And before you can really feel it, there's this like naming of
Hmm.
what it is.
Exactly. So I used it a lot when we were speaking of grief. When I lost my dad, now it's been 4 years, well, obviously there's grief. I mean, that's a part of, losing a parent, but I didn't need to suffer every day with heaviness. That's the difference. Of course, I'm going to grieve. I mean, if I didn't, I think there'd be something wrong here, right? But I could do it in a way. I worked with a colleague of mine during that time and did a lot of EFT. And so it's like, okay, I can function, feel better, but also move through the natural process of grief, which is going to take time, right? But not have so much heaviness and that feeling of like, well, I guess just suffering. Yeah. So that's how it can come in and help. Obviously, there's going to be normal emotions in life and hard things and painful things. But can I move through it so I can feel better and like move through the day?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Such a beautiful practice. And I wondered for just the last couple minutes, could you take us through the points?
I can, yeah. Is there anything? Well, I can continue with that because I just started to say grief if someone was struggling with something like that or any sadness. So what you do is you start with the side of the hand. That's the karate chop point. And to answer the question, if anybody has this, is it as effective in person as it is over Zoom? And it is. It's just as effective. So you're tapping on the karate chop point, either hand, whichever feels good. Then you're going to go to the top of the head. I'm using all four fingers. Then you go to the beginning of the eyebrow, right here. And you're using all four fingers, so you won't miss it there. Then the temple, then under the eye, above the lip, below the lip. Good. Collarbone. So I'm using all my fingers so you won't miss it. You're on the collarbone and beneath it. And you're going to hit the rib cage. I'm going to tip my little camera down here so you can see here, you're right under the breast line on the ribs. Very good for grief, anger, right? That lung meridian. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to go to the side of the body. So right under the armpit. So just on the side of your body. And then the last two are top of the wrist and bottom of the wrist. So what that would look like in a sequence, and then you'd go back to the top of the head. What that would look like in a sequence, let's say I was doing grief and about a loss in my life of some kind, and you're tapping on the side of your hand, you'd say, even though I'm feeling all this grief right now.
Even though
and name it, right? You could say about blank, right? Mm-hmm. I deeply love and completely accept myself. Good.
Completely accept myself.
Yeah. All this sadness.
All this sadness.
Yeah. All this pain.
All this pain.
Right. Around this thing that happened.
Around this thing that happened.
Mm-hmm. Feeling some heavy grief.
Feeling some heavy grief.
And I know it's okay to feel that way.
And I know it's okay to feel that way.
But it's really dragging me down.
But it's really dragging me down.
This heaviness.
This heaviness.
Mm-hmm. All of the sadness I'm feeling.
All of the sadness I'm feeling.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed in the morning.
Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed in the morning.
Sometimes it's hard to get through the day.
Sometimes it's hard to get through the day.
Yeah. All this pain.
All this pain.
Yeah. I'm letting it move through.
I'm letting it move through.
I have every right to feel this way.
I have every right to feel this way.
I have every right to let it go.
I have every right to let it go.
I can feel it as long as I need to.
I can feel it as long as I need to.
I can move through it.
I can move through it.
Yeah, all this heavy grief.
All this heavy grief.
All the sadness.
All the sadness.
Good. Good to stop right here. Yeah. Is that good?
It's great. And
yeah, so usually doing a couple rounds. I just took us through a couple. And then we'd stop and check in. Hey, how is that feeling? And then the person might say, that's moving through, but now I feel this. Mm-hmm. You know, and then we'd work on that next thing. So it's very natural and very led by the client, by the person. Obviously you can tap on your own and you would be tuning into your own feelings. But if you were working with someone else, they always say that we're co-practitioners, and I love that. So, when I'm working with someone, it's definitely guided by what they're feeling.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage everyone listening, to play with that, to be curious about it. And Amy has some tapping as well under the community practice portion of the Humans Evolving site. And we'll have her contact information there if you want to reach out. And you can do that through the platform as well, which is great. I just want to thank you, Amy, because again, it's these embodiment practices, these somatic ways that we can live lighter, and do it in a way that we're not ignoring all that is occurring for us in life. I mean, just what a beautiful practice. And I know I eventually, when my girls are ready, Satya, I'd love to take the training with her because she does like it.
Yeah, I do offer EFT trainings. Thanks for mentioning. Yeah, and training other people for this technique for themselves or to add it to a practice, maybe their business, whatever their word. It's a great tool to have on hand. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm happy to answer any other questions. If anything comes up after hearing this, you can always email me. I'm sure my contact information will be there, but.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks for having me. It makes me so happy to share it with people and to let people know it's available and relatively easy to learn. and to use anytime.
Well, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being a contributor on the Humans Evolving platform and
Love it. Yeah, it's a great.
spreading these teachings. So
Thank
thank you so much.
you for having me.